mentioned, I have a day job. I'm just like you guys, right? I'm not really a professional consultant or doing these things. I am at Zendesk right now, which makes help center software. I work as the PM for search and relevance. It's an interesting space, a new space for me. I previously was working in an analytics product company called Pendo, and as a product, crazy person, this was a dream job because my customers were product managers, so I was talking to people every single day, and it was extremely interesting to see the differences between teams, and it really got me thinking, kind of run the gamut on other things. I got really into UX research. That got that out of my system. It was exciting. Games, different startups of my own. I had a video game. That was my first. I dropped out of school and had a bartending video game. The only funny story there is the aha moment was people were moving their mouse to shake the shaker, the martini shaker, so we made the mouse shake the shaker. So I've been doing some product coaching too, which has been fun. So a little bit of that now on the side. I am a huge product development nerd, and I think about this all the time. It's an obsession for me. I write about it all the time. And sometimes, if you've used Medium, I press publish a little too early. And I say things maybe that weren't the exact right things to say. But I'm absolutely fascinated by product development as a creative activity. I had a background in music and touring with lots of crazy people. Now, most of the people are not, alcoholics and crazy other people now in this space, but it's that same crazy human collaborative environment, and I'm absolutely in love with it. And I also love this tension between craft that we have and commerce and discipline. And at the end of the day, I'm just lately, especially more and more, I'm just obsessed with how to foster environments that are friendly to trust and safety and fearlessness on the part of teams. I try to do that with my team to the best of my ability and fail often, but try to do what I can. But that's really what I've been thinking a lot about lately. And you can see that if you read my posts, so if you want to understand what I've been thinking about recently. So what I'd like to do today is to zero in on this Feature Factory post that I wrote, but I don't want to dig too deep into the post. I want to dig more into the thinking and the reactions I got, because I think there's a lot more learning there. And I want to dig into, as any good product manager, the why. Why did this touch a nerve? Why does this challenge persist? And then maybe what we can do about it as a product community, or not do about it. Maybe it's what we decide not to do about it. So I've listed some of the main smells or the main patterns that I use to say you're working in a feature factory. But a side note here, this was an 11 o'clock at night, 20-minute exercise. I don't want you to look too deeply into it. It was after, like any of you, you have a rough day at work, and you're just, I'm working in a feature factory, and what does it feel like to work in a feature factory? So this was not extremely, as much as I'd like to say it was extremely well thought out. There's probably repetition up here. But I list some of these examples that you might see if you're working at feature factory. And this is from the post. You'd see a rapid shuffling of teams, new projects come assigned to different teams, maybe no core connection to the metrics of the business, no maybe measurement in general. There's no PM retrospective, so you never get together with the PMs on your team and say, let's look at the last 10 decisions we made and understand whether those were good decisions or how we could have improved them. This obsession, there's a post recently called Ruthless Prioritization, and as much as I believe in ruthless prioritization, I thought it was incredibly funny because at no point in the post did it say ruthless validation. We obsess about what goes into the pipe, but not what comes out the other side of the pipe. A lot of engineers report this no tweaking. You ship something 7 years later, you go back, and it's this pride thing. Oh, the founder of the company wrote that piece of code, and we're back to it for the first time. The handoffs, the batches that we create big, large projects. Everyone's been in the business of chasing upfront revenue or shiny objects or the hippos idea. These are well known, and this is a little bit what I'd like to get into. I make these drawings, and this was the drawing here, the land of meetings, where GoToMeeting is broken. I guess now it's Zoom, the end of the quarter, the owner of the list, the stuff to build, and the UX sprinkling the fairy dust. The pixie dust goes to the genius builders and then gets laid out in a big pile there, which is the product. And then there's the customer sort of saying, what's going on here? So but let me cut to the chase. I figured out on Medium, if you draw a picture and you put it in there, more people will check it out. So I add these little pictures. So I clicked publish on this post, and maybe I saw 100 people looked at it, or 200 people. And within a day, it went up to 10,000. And for any, I'm not a professional blogger or something. 10,000 seems like a lot. It seems like this is the big time. It's never going to get any better than this, right? This is it. And then I started to get a couple messages on Twitter, and some people sent me some messages. But then I woke up 2 days later, and it was at 50,000 and 100,000 and 200,000 and 300,000. I guess someone had posted it on Reddit. And so then it just sort of exploded. And I would have friends from other companies say, what the hell did you just do? Like, my engineers are sending around this feature factory post and everyone's getting angry. Or, or they would say, we interrupted our product meeting because someone wouldn't stop talking about this post. Or the Slack, everything. Oh, okay, it's on Slack again. And these were friends, so I thought, wow, I maybe went a little bit overboard here. So it touched a nerve, obviously, maybe unintentionally, among PMs, engineers, UX, other people working. So everyone wants to have the solution, so they kept reaching out, how do I beat it? Of course, I tried to write like 15 posts to describe how to beat it, and still people keep asking me how to beat it. But this is what I've noticed, and I'm absolutely obsessed by this question, because every day I hear about people talking about outcomes, not output. You go on Twitter, it's about outcomes, not output. There's books written about it. You're supposed to sense and respond. I worked at the analytics startup, and every customer I talked to said, please, we need to measure these outcomes we're trying to create. We need to figure out if this stuff has impact. But we all gravitate on some level to focusing on outcomes. I think we care about it deeply as human beings to create outcome and create impact, but still, for the most part, this is theoretical. It's the flying cars, right? This is the fringe thing you do 10% of your time when the magic aligns on your project. Because when the chips are down and the emails are flying and the backlogs are being built and people are talking, it falls by the wayside. In my work too. So I'm as much, I try and try and try. And the way I best describe it, it's like a dance partner you don't exactly like to dance with. Very awkward and a clumsy dance, but somehow you're just drawn to go back and have this dance every once in a while. And for something that appears to sap people's energy so fiercely that people will write me, 3-page long, you've described my life as an engineer for the past 3 decades. I feel mostly powerless to do something about it. And this is what I was obsessed by. Why are we powerless? Why is this some drama that goes on over and over again that we keep talking about that fills conferences, but we can't really seem to work it out of our system? So the first thing I'd like to do is let's do a thought experiment. Don't worry, this is going to be very stressful for you, but no one's going to get fired. So you walk into work on Monday. There's been some problem with your product. Production stops. No new features. Nope, nothing. They don't fire you because you can do something else. You maybe go and sell something. But there's no new features. And I want you to imagine what happens that day. Okay, what happens that day? So think about it. Now, what happens a week from that day? Nothing new. 6 months. Nothing new. Nothing new. There's been nothing new. And I want you to think about all the things that happen in your company, all the outcomes that don't happen, all the impacts on your customers, the economic outcomes that occur in your business. What can't your customers do now? What is the press writing about you? What are your competitors saying about you? Are you literally blown out of the water like everyone said you'd be if you didn't ship anything? So think about that. And the reason why I want you to think about that is when I talk about outcomes through the rest of the talk, that's what I'm referring to. It's those things, right? I've taken them all away. I've told you aren't going to have any features. So therefore, all the things that you were going to create with the features are the things that you're not going to have anymore, right? So think about that. What happened in that year or 2 years or 6 months? I've already talked a little bit too much, but quick show of hands, how many people have pulled a feature from their product in the last 6 months because it didn't achieve the desired goal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 people out of the total crowd. So that's about the percentage that we're actually going back and maybe pulling features from our product. Because obviously everyone's perfect, right? So we were going to get them out. So what does it actually feel like to work in the feature factory? Well, it really depends on who you talk to. And I heard from these people. It's awesome. The velocity is great. Our estimates are perfect. They're accurate. All our projects are green. Everyone is super busy when I walk in. The CEO says, "What's new?" And I say, "This is what's new. These 10 bullets are new." And he goes, "Yeah, that's great." And then if you're in the engineering team is so responsive. Have you noticed how responsive they are lately? They are just on the ball. They have been great. So, to some people, this actually feels like work is happening. And if you're a product person and you think about your product in a certain way, your vision is being realized, just in tiny little pieces. Your perfect vision for the product is getting delivered one little piece at a time, and it's going to be done. So what's not to like about that? That sounds actually pretty good. It really does. That's my point here. It actually is not that bad when you think about it. But to others, the experience is very, very different. And I'll paraphrase an engineer friend of mine. It says, "We're working on a one-way conveyor belt. I have no idea if any of the stuff I've been working on is working. I pour my heart and soul into this. We're cutting corners constantly. I feel like my career is going down the drain. I check back on the stuff I've been working on because I have access to the raw data and you don't. And I find that almost half the stuff is not being used." So that's what it feels like on the other side of this. And that's why I'm bringing up, this is a product thing, and I want to focus on your feelings too, but that's the feeling of someone who's working on your product, and this, some of your most passionate people. Because your most passionate people, your team members gravitate towards creating impact with their craft. That's what floats their boats. What I love about this picture is look at everyone's face. This team assembled to be able to help this individual, and you can see his mom right there, get over the finish line. Like, that is impact. That is passion when you look at those people's eyes. So we can all retreat into our craft for a little while, and that's actually fun. You can go deep into your craft. But like an engineer once said, they said, I can dig my head into a problem any day. I can even go for a year digging into a really hard problem. But eventually I'm going to stick my head up for air, and if you don't give me air, I'm going to die. I'm going to wither and die. Like, I need to create output with this particular work. And it's not just the most passionate people on your teams who are very outspoken, and this is incredibly important because we have stereotypes about the people we work with, and sometimes the most quiet, introverted person, we assume that they don't really care, that they just like sitting at a computer, and if the text editor is open or their IDE is open, that means that they're happy. Talk to them, because sometimes they actually care the most about anyone on the team, about whether it's producing value. They are just not as outspoken as we are as product people to express that. And I've noticed lately, this is in line with this, the craft movement is very interesting. There's clean code. I've noticed this around the UX community. I'd even say that Mind the Product in some sense is a craft community, right? We're attracted to this community. But one common thread I keep hearing in the craft communities is that Agile sucks, and incrementalism sucks, and blind output sucks. It all sucks. There has to be something more to this. There has to be some craft with what we're doing. These can't be completely separate. So I think it's fascinating and interesting. I love the craft movement, but think about the undercurrent there that's driving people into the craft movement. People are not saying, what is the craft of whole team product development? They're saying, what's the craft of UX, or what's the craft of product, or what's the craft of engineering? And that's important because I think you can have multiple crafts that you're into this thing, but these are some people have expressed that they've given up on that other craft because they think that it's a dead end. But I think this is positive because I think we can actually harness this, and I'll talk about it a little later in the talk. So, question, does anyone ever get fired for shipping something? No. Well, it's okay, but, right? Maybe sometimes. Okay, the roadmap is reviewed, marketing is giving it the thumbs up, all the VPs huddled, they did that healthy tension thing, which is really exciting when they do that. which just means more emotional investment because there was tension and it was healthy. Your team stared at these items as they drifted up the roadmap. They're so invested in these things. Everyone remembers the names, then you work on it. So if that bombs, let's say we discover that the feature bombs, do you think it's going to really matter? At the end, and this goes a little bit to the ethics talk as well, right? Like, does some things really matter? Are we even letting them matter? Because I don't want to see anyone get fired, frankly. I like safe environments. But I want you to consider that that can go on for years in your organization before there is a reorg and product new direction. The system, Joanna talked about this earlier, will preserve itself. And if this is the dominant way that people are talking and doing, the system will preserve itself around stabilizing the system in that environment. So we can go a very long time before we actually have to address this. Now, second controversial thing, maybe not. I think we all love to complain. Engineering is slow. Product never gives us good requirements. Marketing doesn't understand the product. Ops is terrible. They need to do DevOps or something, right? Sales is selling outside the box. Product is asking us to cut corners. HR doesn't want to give us the new benefits package. So as terrible as this sounds, let me propose one thing. It's horrible. By being able to complain in this environment about all our little locally optimized silos about other people in our organization, we're able to effectively absolve anyone from blame. Again, it's a stabilizing system, and that's what I want to think about, because if you're going to break this cycle, you need to understand the powers that are stabilizing it. Everything is fucked up, and we love it. We like the drama. We like the drama of the way we're working. It's great. Wow, if everything worked, what would we do? Oh my God, sales sold exactly what we told them to sell to, exactly who we said they could sell it to, and they're making lots of money. It's awesome. So this is obviously what happens. We create these proxy variables in the organization. And so the deeper things of the feature factory here are around funding and performance management, if you think about it, and managing by proxy variables. So CEO wants to know, what are we going to get for our money? Empathize with that person. And that's a reasonable thing to say, right? I sent you away to the design thinking conferences. That's all good, but like, what am I going to get for my money? CTO is kind of given up on trying to tell product what to do, so he just wants to be responsive, right? Because that's how he's doing good. Like, I trust you guys. I trust product. We'll do our best to move quickly for you. And Scrum Master needs to measure people because someone told them to measure people. So you've got story points. And I've had managers, and I asked them, well, why are we actually estimating? They said, oh, to see if people will be held accountable. That's exactly what they said, and I was thinking, like, that's so weird, right? So, long story short, our environments institutionalize handoffs. They institutionalize local optimization to control and to buffer trust and to create trust in the organization. Again, very important, because to defeat the feature factory, you need to replace that trust, because systems are balanced. And if you pull something out, you need to replace it. So you do need to replace that trust. So we need to execute is translation for everyone needs to do their part, and part of the product development team is to deliver, and everyone's done their best, right? To do those things. So again, stabilize systems. Now, contrast this. Let's be empathetic to the situation. You go to the CEO and you show them this picture. This is what a mission-based team actually feels like. It's scary. They are exploring for gold. They're going up a river. They've never been up the river before. They don't know if there's gold at the end, right? And maybe there's someone accountable, the person who arranged this expedition, but everyone's responsible, because if someone screws up, they're just going to die, I guess. You might even pull the work. You might get all the way up the river and decide that there wasn't gold at the end. That's what it feels like. So this is weird, right? So when we talk about feature factory sucks and outcomes over output, understand that your company needs to have the systems in place to create safety for this type of effort. We need alternate funding strategies. We need to change how we're doing program management. And even product management structures need to change. And I'd say that to the VPs and the C-level product people here. Very, very brief story. Young engineer comes to me and says, I want to learn more about what you do. Awesome. To say that to a UX researcher is awesome. And they say, I don't quite understand what you do. I'm going to tell you about my world. My world's incredibly structured. Everyone reads every little piece of code that I do. I have to write tests for everything I do. I can bring down the site if I do something wrong. I'm making a cost-benefit decision every 15 minutes. I'm trying to use all the training that I used in all my comp sci degrees and everything around this thing. This is my life. And they said, what's your passing test? What's your discipline? And I'm going to be honest, like I started talking, like, well, we do this, and then we meet at this meeting, and we do this. And I realized at that point I didn't have a good answer. This was early, a couple years ago. I think I have a better answer now, but I still didn't have a great answer. So again, just being empathetic in your environments. When we say, these engineers are so cavalier, they don't seem to have room to care about the outcomes that we're creating, do they? They live in a world that they are so over-scrutinized that as product managers, we have it pretty easy. Our calendars are full, but we have it pretty easy. So it's important to look inwards. And to look inwards, we need to talk about the superheroes and the magicians and the fortune tellers. Because who are these people? They answer 100 emails a day. They do 10 meetings a day. They know how to talk product, engineer, UX, and other things. They're busy all the time. They have to have answers on demand all the time. It's us, right? That's the product community. And so what I want you to do is to say, when do we fall back to the feature factory because of our own fears, the own expectations that have been placed on you? And again, to the VPs or C-level people, are you creating impossibly big shoes to fill for your product team members? We pride ourselves. There's blog posts written about how fluid you're supposed to be. You're supposed to wear 100 hats. I see too much burnout in the product management community, and I see too many people get into it and then get out of it. And I think that this is an important thing because I think that we need to look inwards before we criticize a lot of the feature factory stuff we're doing. Why do we need to feel like we need to control information all the time? Do we have trust issues with our team? Are we afraid that they're going to do something, they're going to go rogue? I've had people say, watch them, they're going to go rogue. Right? So, that's what we're talking about. So, traditional product owner description from, Scrum Training 101, you completely own the backlog, you fill it up with all these particular items, you sort it, you can move it anytime you want, and then the team does those particular things, it goes out, then you accept and you reject it, right, at the end of the sprint, right, because you're the customer proxy, obviously you can accept and reject it. This doesn't work, right? Anyone I've seen who's gone to traditional sort of Scrum product owner training, a junior person, maybe before they have a lot of experience in their career, they quickly morph away from this if you're doing any type of business-to-business or business-to-consumer product where you might as well just go to the customer, right? It's not an internal business system, and you need to keep that in mind when you learn about Scrum because a lot of these were internal tools, internal business systems that they were creating. So we don't want that. But I live in Silicon Valley, and the modern thing is the Rockstar product manager, right? It's all about them. It's all about what they need to do. They are going to crush the competition, which translation actually means crush the other teams internally within your company so you can get more resources. They come to the team with problems to solve, and everyone here has played this trick where you say to the team, like, I'm just going to come to you with the problem. And then they come up with a solution, and you're like, yes, they came up with the exact solution that I wanted them to come to. And you don't realize that you actually fed them that, right? You basically put the solution on a platter. And these folks will refer to my team as if they own the team. Oh, my team was doing this. I told them what to do. So, okay, this dysfunction, right? I think this creates the feature factory, right? This type of thinking, which is supposed to be enlightened product thinking, I don't think is very enlightened. So, to cut to the chase, has anyone heard the phrase, let me try to do this. Anyone heard the phrase, bring me solutions, not problems? Okay, how many people, show of hands, does that actually make them cringe? One. Okay, that's the point, right? It makes me cringe, because most of the time when someone says that, no one really understands the problem anyway, right? it makes me cringe because I hate idea battles. And that's what happens when you bring solutions. But think about the hands that were raised. We're told that that's the right thing to do. Don't bother your manager. Come with a solution to the thing. Now, if I come to the solution and say, yeah, I think you should just let our team go at it for 6 months and incrementally fund this effort, and for we can move this particular needle, you can give us more money or we'll stop. No, what are you going to do? No, I just told you what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend 6 months and try to sell. Do you trust us or not? Oh, actually, well, you need to tell me what you're going to do. So think about that. That's how ingrained we are. Even though we talk about how terrible the outcome approach is, most people, this is ingrained. So the first thing that will help us break free is we need to embrace the technology landscape. And I've heard a couple awesome references to this over the course of the day, but our products are becoming more like service ecosystems, right? This idea that you're just delivering the perfect product, but just in little pieces, is being replaced what I think is best described by Lego. You can move the pieces around. Every feature is today's solution. Right? And as someone was telling me before, it's funny, we're building the perceived solutions that someone dreamed up of 2 years ago, because that's when they filled out the backlog. Every feature is a fleeting solution to a capability. That's what it is. And so when you take this service ecosystem standpoint, it actually starts helping you justify beating the feature factory, because you understand that this is not as clear as we thought it was. It's not a pair of shoes where they added, well, actually, these shoes are breaking. But anyway, yeah, that particular part, someone dreamed up that feature and that shipped. We have a much more vibrant environment with many of our products. Even hardware is more vibrant than we would think. Unvalidated complexity will kill your product. And I see it over and over and over again, and I think this is largely in these complex ecosystem-driven product ecologies or service ecologies, right? Because if you don't keep complexity down in your product, every one of your companies will come to the point where the exact thought experiment I told you about, where nothing actually gets built for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months while all the technical debt is refactored because the shit hit the fan, like how you build your product and the degree to which you can tame the complexity in your product will actually drive your innovation capability as your company. There is a real economic need, because otherwise your product becomes like this server room. What if you needed to fix something in this room? It's pretty hard. We need to cure ourselves of the output fetish on the part of product managers ourselves, because we say it too. Come into work, man, if my team could just move faster, we'd totally beat the competition. Or everyone's really busy. So we can look inwards and cure ourselves here. Because this is the issue. A team optimized for ultimate efficiency and output will almost by definition not be optimized for novelty or innovation or creativity or the ability to reconfigure ourselves. We get stuck in the upper right-hand corner, which is exploiting known information in a convergent way. To plan, converge the team, exploit existing information that we have, and we get stuck. But you're not going to survive in a service ecology like this if you can't bounce around between these things. And the reality is fast is table stakes now. Fast is table stakes. It's your ability to execute by jumping around this particular environment that will actually give you success as a company. So there's economic reasons to take this approach. It's not just feature factory is bad, it bums people out. You need to be able to move around this particular things. And I think we're stuck in the upper right sometimes, and I think that that's what does it. We can't expect data to be our silver bullet. I am a huge data nerd. Engineers love the data. I love the data. But what we see is that we fantasize that the data will solve our trust issues in our company. We dream of the perfect answer where no one will need to have the hard conversation. And the data, if you work with data, is very rarely that definitive. I mean, maybe you're running A/B tests or that type of thing. It's a lot harder than that. And so a lot of what we're doing is not a scientific experiment. If we wait around for scientific certainty for everything we're doing, we might not move fast enough. So the other thing we need to do is stop dreaming that data will solve trust problems in your organization or that you will always have perfection in what you're doing. Because one of the reasons for the feature factory is because the opposite is often analysis paralysis. That's what people are scared of. So think you're an executive, you're like, I have the feature factory where people are getting things done, or I'm going to send people away on, pilgrimages with like peyote into the desert or something like that, and then they'll come back with the ultimate solution. I would pick the feature factory over that. Evidence-driven product development requires safety. I really encourage you to check out Modern Agile and Joshua Kiriesky's work with Modern Agile. He simplifies what we're doing in Agile and gives it a kind of modern lens, which I don't think he likes the word lens, but I'd call it lens. It's a perspective into maybe more core Agile ideas. But one of the key things that had a huge influence on me is this idea of safety as a prerequisite. Psychological safety, safety to experiment with your customers, safety to ship code, safety to move quickly, safety for your investors, safety for every member in your ecosystem. The hardest thing with safety is people think it's like training wheels. And that's actually the opposite. Think of a trampoline, someone's ability to try out new moves, or think for kids, his example is the push bike versus a bike with training wheels. The kid starts riding fast with the training wheels, but the kid who rides the push bike, where you lay your feet over the bike like that, actually learns how to ride a bicycle. And so that's the type of safety that we're talking about. We have a lot more influence in our organizations than we make it out to be. And we sit at this epicenter, which is the no man's land. That's why we're hired to do it, because not that many people can function in the no man's land. So we sit at this area, and I think that we have a lot of influence. And even when you're talking about the feature soup, there is nothing stopping anyone in the room for also mentioning outcomes. There's nothing stopping anyone in the room for also talking about new learnings or new impact you want to create. Now, you might need to talk about the feature soup to someone, but I've been talking to PMs a lot, and very few of them are actually hindered from thinking about outcomes or hindered from talking about it. And I think this is important because if we think of the product community as the guide, we have a ability to guide our organizations down this path. Now, for sure, there's a lot of structural bullshit, and that's the kind of stuff we were talking about before, all these systemic issues in the company. But the thing I wanted to leave you with as we wrap up is that we have a lot more power than we think, and this is something that if you have one team in your organization, and I've talked with a number of you about this, the one team in your organization that takes a more outcome-driven approach, presents it to the leadership in your company, people review the data, that actually becomes a wildfire in your organization. People say, why would we do it differently than that team? They were really good. It happens all the time, and bottom-up change, there's a lot of debate about whether bottom-up change can happen, but I think in this, we have more control than we think to be able to run our efforts the way we want to run them in most of our organizations. So is the feature factory bad? No. Think about it. There may be times when you should just deliver a list of features. What people were angry about with the feature factory was that it touched issues about trust, it touched issues about safety, about agency, about craft, about how we were working with our teams, about how people had been beaten down for decades and not had a product manager discuss outcomes with them or bring data to them. And I would suggest that's what brought out the response. Because at some point, maybe it's economically smart to deliver a list of things in a known domain that you have to do. So to finish that, I guess this is my bit. My prompt to everyone is be humble, be disciplined about your work, because I think that will really start this change to thinking about outcomes. Practice the craft, participate in the messy world that we have, that we love. And it sounds very trite to say, but I think we can change the dialogue one conversation at a time. I do it in my work. I've seen people do it in their work. One mention of a data point or one mention of a particular outcome. Forget even quantitative data all the time. Qualitative data. I recorded 12 videos from customers and brought them back to engineers once. And that was regarded as like a transformative experience for them to get that type of thing. So one conversation at a time, start thinking about impact and outcomes, and I think that can have a large effect in how we work. And that's it. Thanks.